Colleagues, I see that we have quorum, and I call this Policy and Priorities Committee meeting to order. We have before us an agenda, and it was moved by Councilor Rivyak that the agenda as presented be adopted. Any discussion? Any amendments? See no action. Call the question. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Colleagues, are there any areas of pecuniary interest or conflicts of interest?
No, Mr. Chair.
No. Could that please be recorded, Madam Clerk? First order of business is consideration of additional committees, including but not limited to Small Town Field Committee, Community Improvement Committee, Plan Committee, Cultural Committee, etc., to align with strategic plan and goals. And we have a motion by Councillor King that staff be directed to prepare terms of reference for the following advisory or ad hoc committees for Council's consideration to be aligned with the strategic plan values and goals, and that staff present the proposed terms of reference at the next regular Policy and Priorities Committee scheduled March 16th, 2015. And the committees are left blank and up to Council to delineate what committees we would like staff to develop the terms of reference for. Are there any? No. Colleagues? Mr. Mayor.
I'll wade in on maybe an easy one. The idea of the Community Improvement Plan Committee was sort of talked about at our last, I guess, meeting. And it was the idea of how do we spur development in the spur on, or whatever the term is, encourage the use of the community improvement plan areas, look at things, and do we need a separate committee for that? So really, maybe before council says we direct staff to do terms of reference, it might be helpful for us to know what's the best practice out there. Is that the best way to achieve that goal, the goal of encouraging community improvement plan usage? Or are there other methods? So my thinking would be that we would ask staff to come back with a report on for that particular issue to the next P&P meeting, just to say what's the best practice out there, what do communities do, before we go off and set up a committee just to do something, and maybe the best practice is whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So that's my thinking on that particular piece, and I'd like to hear from colleagues.
So, Mr. Mayor, I don't know whether that would be an amendment to this motion, or whether it would be almost an entirely new motion.
It probably would be that we would just direct staff to go do that. So.
Yeah. So do you propose to put that forward? We do have this on the table.
That's fine.
Can we play this out, and then we'll come back to you?
Absolutely. I'm just giving feedback on it.
Okay, thank you. Any comments along that line with respect to the CIP?
Not the CIP. I have another suggestion for a committee.
Just along that CIP line, if I may comment, I know when the CIP came in, there was a vision to have some promotional work done to drive the CIP, and at that time there was nothing put in the budget to do that, nor was there a structure put in place to do that. So that certainly would be one area. Another area that could be put into that committee terms of reference is we currently now farm out commentary with respect to the designs. Right. And given some of the expertise in the community, that's something that might be able to be handled by a review committee as part of being the CIP, and would save some money for the town and engage more citizenry in our from the expertise bank that's out there. So that might be included in the report.
Okay.
Okay. Any committees that we would like to have the terms of reference? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've spoken a number of times and made reference a number of times to a drainage advisory committee. And I don't think we've created one anywhere else, and I think this is a good time probably to explore how useful one might be in this town. Certainly, we have residents who are asking for it and looking for the opportunity to participate. So I think it's one we ought to take a look at.
Comments on that, colleagues?
Yeah, just quickly, again, I agree. Let's look for best practices in other municipalities as well to see how they handle the issue. There are a couple of situations I'm aware of where such a committee exists and is used for that purpose, so.
So you're thinking a referral to staff again for another
Yeah,
report
there's a couple.
regarding best practice?
Yeah, there are a couple of municipalities that take that kind of protocol, and it's already been created. It's a question of whether we want to adopt that type of protocol.
Councillor Ribbiak, you brought it up. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that it makes sense to understand through an examination of best practices how terms of reference can be set up to make this as useful as possible.
Right.
Fundamentally, the purpose of this committee is to provide our drainage superintendent with information regarding drainage issues as and when they occur in real time, and thereby initiating a response as may be appropriate within the town's ability to manage. So, you know, it seems fairly simple and straightforward, but certainly the terms of reference probably require an examination, among other things, for legal reasons. Obviously, we have a drainage superintendent, and some things relate to municipal drains and some things don't. So it's probably worthwhile looking to see how others handle it. But I think fundamentally there's an expressed desire and probably a need to have a drainage advisory committee in the town.
What that means.
I'm wondering, colleagues, as I'm just sitting here thinking, for expediency's sake, could we not kill two birds with one stone? If we're referring them, and maybe by just amending this, if we list the committees that we feel are important to the community, and just make it part of the motion that we would have a referral to staff to investigate best practices, come back with a report regarding best
I would rather-
practices,
I would
as
rather-
well as the terms of reference.
rather do
So
that.
then it's all rolled into one. So we list the committees that we think are important, and just amend the motion to have a staff report.
I'll move that.
Okay, so. So the staff be directed to investigate best practices?
Yes, investigate that.
Investigate and report?
And I guess develop terms of reference as appropriate.
And to. So,
And do you have, and to develop terms of reference as appropriate?
yeah,
Okay.
that staff be directed to investigate and report on best practices and to prepare terms of reference where appropriate,
Right. And then I think,
or the following committees, and then we can list.
so, Mr. Chair, I think that may take a little longer than just the next cycle. So I'm just wondering what the CAO would recommend in terms of timing.
Take your time.
Should it be,
It could
You know,
become
April or-
piecemeal even.
Yeah, for that matter.
okay. So as long as the motion's adaptable enough, you had a timeline in there.
Yeah, we have a timeline to March the
See.
16th. Just take the March 16th out and
Yeah,
then staff can roll it
future
forward.
meeting of PNP, future meetings of PNP. And then I would recommend that you add all the committees that are listed on the agenda and the drainage committee, I guess, which is what Councilor
Drainage
Rubio
advisory.
suggested. Advisory committee, drainage advisory committee.
Okay, so the CIP committee, drainage committee,
Advisory committee.
cultural,
Advisory committee, yeah.
and the small town feel. Whatever that might mean.
Yeah.
Anything else, colleagues? Councilor Ribbiak, I see you waving at me.
I do, and I guess we'll all have different views as to the importance of it, but we don't have a committee that looks at issues like poverty or housing. And I don't know whether a residents advisory committee would be useful with regard to that, but that's an area that we don't spend a whole lot of time talking about. And I know that from time to time we have hints through our regional councillor that we have issues within the region. And again, I have a half-baked notion. I don't have anything fully blown, and I just wonder whether that might be looked at as well.
Councillor Pat.
I think I have some experience in this,
Yes.
so I would call it to explore, while you're doing this, what they call a social responsibility committee.
Perfect.
And that covers a whole range of things from income, housing. We've had these discussions, as you know, about whether it's affordable for people to live here, what's the level. So a social responsibility committee, and those terms are available. Actually, some of the local municipalities now are going into that, not just those that are under distress, but the others that are saying, what's our social responsibility to our people here locally?
Indeed. I appreciate Councillor Papp's intervention in that. I like those words.
And there's a lot of information, Councillor Ribbiak, that I can give you from several of the institutes, Caledon, Tamarack. They do work with this across the country.
That may even become a role of the Small Town Field Committee.
Actually, that's right.
You know, that may be part of that.
That would be good.
We respect our
Yep.
citizenry. But we'll put that down for
Now,
investigation.
just for the sake, and I'll give staff some links to some areas where this has already been done. That gives you, and it's from small communities to very large ones like Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa. Pretty easy. I'll give
Any
you the
other
links,
committees
That's the work's been completed.
that cross your mind? Sorry to interrupt there, Councillor Papp.
No.
Just trying to move the meeting
No,
forward.
I want to be on the LCBO committee.
Mr. CAO, would you like to add any further committees to your work, or?
You want more, Bert?
Thank you,
more work.
Mr. Chairman. The less committees that council creates, the better it is for us.
Well, we've got to think of some more.
Okay,
then.
so
Okay, that's,
are there any additions?
No, I think that's a good place to start.
Everybody understands the amendments that we proposed? So I'm just going to call the amended, Councillor Papp.
no, just quickly, and I don't want to belabor this because I know in light of what Councillor Bodnar brought here, if it's implied somewhere that we would be involved in promoting tourism within Pelham, I don't know where that fits. I don't know who does that, if it's part of economic development. I don't want to, we've had this discussion several times, but we've never really, like, who's ultimately responsible for doing that? So maybe it'll fit under the South Niagara Tourism, and then I'll leave it at that. Let's try to figure, we'll see.
Yeah, be interesting to see that report. Anything further?
I think
No.
bring it up next week.
I'm gonna-
Just to that, I
Yeah.
think
I'm
Council
gonna-
Papp should bring that up when we have our next group of the economic development
Yes.
group,
Yeah, I'm gonna
which I
bring-
think is next week, so,
Because there may be other areas of alignment
right.
as
Yeah.
well. But that's a whole different story here, folks. We got a motion on the floor that's been amended. Everybody understands it, or do you want me to read it back?
No, I understand.
No? Call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay. Next bit of business, acting CAO compensation. There is a report there, and it has been moved by Councillor Durley that the Policy and Priorities Committee received the issue sheet regarding acting chief administrative office compensation, and the committee recommend to council that the acting chief administrative officer compensation policy be approved. Discussion. We'll just move down the line if I can. Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you. I'm looking at the solution statement within the proposal. The designated member of the senior management team will be compensated an additional 5% of their salary for the means of acting on behalf of the chief administrative officer. I guess I have two points to make with regard to that. Number one, I don't know what that means. I don't know why it doesn't say of their salary for acting on behalf of the chief administrative officer. Those words are strange. So maybe that's just an administrative thing, and maybe that can be lifted, unless there is a specific meaning to that might be important for us to know.
Mr. CAO.
There's no specific meaning, and I concur with the councilor's suggestion.
Just clean up the language.
And the other point I have is that it seems to me that there might be a use for having a couple of basic conditions around that, like indicating under what circumstances and for what length of time a designation might occur. What's a minimum length of time? And under what circumstances, that sort of thing. So something basic.
Mr. Seo, do you want to speak to that?
That makes some sense, Mr. Chairman, as far as designating a time. We left it open and at the discretion of the CAO. This is a case more often than not when the CAO would be taking a vacation for an extended period, a week or more. If the CAO is away at meetings for the day, then you don't do that sort of thing. So it was always thought to be somewhat discretional. Discretion of the CAO. The real reason for this policy is simply that we have a policy on the books for pay equity. It's a housekeeping matter. And that's the real intent why it's before council.
Further to that?
That's fine. I think we understood that it was at the discretion of the CAO, but you set something into a policy, and you've also kind of created a bit of a trap for yourself. And if someone suggests that, for the 15 minutes when the CAO was away, I was in charge, and therefore I deserve, you don't want to get into that. So I think it is at CAO's discretion. There ought to be some understanding of that. Maybe just those words alone would suffice.
Are you satisfied with that, or do you want to propose some addition?
I think at this stage, the CAO is looking for some direction on how to clean this up before we get this back. So I don't know that that a motion is required. I think we understand that where we're going with that.
I don't understand it.
You don't understand it? In that case, then I'll make a motion that there be a minimum period of time indicated in which this policy would take effect. Or
I know what you mean. We'll look at that.
good, terrific, thank you.
Okay. So do you want to take that as a staff direction, just to amend the policy and bring it back? Are there any further amendments that you'd like to have the CAO incorporate in this before?
No, those were my comments, just with regard to the solution statement. Everything else was fine with me.
Councillor King, I had you next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Ribbiak has touched on one of my points, which was that it is stated in the policy that there is a minimum amount of time, because my thought is, and we're not going to even go there, Mr. CAO, that if this person is replacing for a minimum of 4 weeks or more, then it's more of a temporary assignment, and that person is actually acting as the CAO, as opposed to somebody who's filling in because you're on vacation for a week. So I know you're looking at me as though she's got two heads. But I think I really feel strongly about whether this is a temporary assignment to fulfill the role and replace that role in its capacity for a significant period of time, as opposed to it could be a week here or a week
So
there.
what we need to do is see that part fleshed out,
Yes.
is what you're both saying.
Yeah, we're both saying the same thing
Okay.
in different ways. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Gurley.
My point's exactly, just a little definition in there will certainly clean that up.
Okay. We'll just keep on moving down. Councillor Pack, do you have any comments on that?
Yes, we have a brand-new director of HR, so why doesn't the two of them in the CAA work out what is a clearer protocol and definition time, what circumstances are that those are. There's lots of examples out there. Would clear all of this up.
What should we do with this? Just push it over to the next. There you go. Got something to do now.
Now you can blame me, I gave you work.
We all blame him.
Bring it back to the DP. Okay, so we were just discussing how best to deal with this. Can we just have an amendment to this, that it be brought back to P&P as opposed to going to council? Is that what you want? Or do you want to see it at council and deal with it?
Well, Mr. Chair, if you're directing the question to me, I don't think that the changes that we're asking for, looking at, are so complicated that it requires coming back to P&P. I think it's largely there. 95% of it is there, I think, and can come to council with some changes that simply put a fence around timing, and we're good.
So maybe we need an amendment to this, that committee recommend to council that be amended as directed.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, next order of business here is communication policy. And you have the report, and I have a motion that was presented by Councillor Junkin, that Policy and Priorities Committee receive the issue sheet regarding a communication policy, and that committee recommend to council that the communication policy be approved. Discussion. We'll go this way this time. Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps through you to the CAO, just wondering where the mayor's column and the articles submitted by the regional council that are frequently published fit into this policy.
They don't specifically fall into the policy. The mayor's column is something that, or the regional councilors, first of all, we have no jurisdiction over the regional councilors' media information, so that wouldn't be something that we could cover by the policy. As far as the mayor's column, that's part of the function as role as head of council and the chief spokesman. So there wasn't anything contemplated as far as putting some specific policy around a specific thing that the mayor does as far as advocating or communicating on behalf of the municipality.
Okay.
Councillor Doherty.
I had the regional council there just so it didn't look like I'm picking on the mayor. Okay, that just, it going, just, there was no mention of it there, and it's, I think the mayor's columns come up more frequently than Anna's, so I was just wondering, but that's good.
Did you have any concerns in that area, Councillor Durley?
Yes, I
Like,
do,
would
but
you-
I'm gonna shut up.
Would it be helpful if the mayor's, would it be helpful if we suggested to the mayor that his article be circulated to the rest of council prior to publication?
If you think that's wise.
You brought the issue up, Councillor. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, I'm just trying to read between the lines.
Ready for a drink.
Anybody else have any feelings on this? Councillor?
I do, Mr. Chair. I think the role of the mayor in part is to be the public voice, face, if you will, of council, and that communication that he does is probably an excellent example of how that can work. I don't see any particular issue with it, but and I'm not sure that it doesn't fit within the policy as it's written, because the policy does indicate the role of councillors, including, I would think, the mayor as a councillor as well, and what he is or is not able to do and how he's able to represent it. So, you know, I would say he writes a good column, let him continue. If we want to write columns too, I guess we can, because that's not prohibited. It's understood in the communication policy what weight it would have and what role it would play. So I'm not concerned with it.
Others to that? Councillor?
Well, what you write in your column and what the council is here, as just from my past experiences, a reflection of, you're being the media spokesperson for the corporation. So you're not going to say things, you're going to say things that are in alignment with what we're doing. The key to it is, as someone said to me the other day, a very knowledgeable person in the municipal corporation, council must be informed all the time of everything. because it's not just one person, you or the CAO, who are liable and responsible for what takes place. So any media relations and anything that happens affects us, because people think that we're speaking as one voice. And we may be opposed to it, but generally speaking, we should be very careful. The only thing that I'm not quite sure, and I don't want to debate this too much, about the authorized spokespersons. It's always been my understanding that the mayor is the spokesperson of the corporation, and no one disrespects CAO. It's always been my understanding that the mayor speaks for the corporation, and the CAO is authorized by us as council to speak if that's the case. And maybe that's implied there, and if it is, I understand that fully. And then the other thing is, when it comes to, and I'll leave that, I have a couple of other quick references, but as long as it's consistent and does not jeopardize and puts us, and I hate to use the legal, puts us in a situation where it exposes us and puts us in a situation where we're trying to defend things that are not necessarily, that are within our jurisdiction, or for that matter, are outside of our jurisdiction. And I think those have been few and far between, but nonetheless, it's our job to ensure that if something does, you say something, or whether it's me, that you take the appropriate steps to correct me. If not, the general public will very quickly, because they look at us, how we say and how we act and what we do is critical to how the organization fulfills its responsibility. Same applies to staff. So I don't have a difficulty, and I can't speak about the regional council because that technically is his personal column, and I don't see anything in there unless there are things that come out that are, and I've had this debate, Councillor Durley remembers this a few years ago, about when you say you wear your hat, you really are wearing the hat of the municipality at the region for us. So anyhow, I'll leave it at that, and
I have the mayor.
Oh, sorry, I
Go ahead.
was gonna talk about the question.
Which, okay, that sounds like probably an easier thing. So if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, I'll
Yeah, go
let the CAO speak to his role and as a,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The intent here is that there's two, maybe more, but there's at least two different types of media communication. When the newspaper calls or the radio station calls, et cetera, and wants a quote, or there's a quote put into a press release,
Right.
that is always deferred to the mayor. I
That's
don't
correct.
speak to
Right.
I will give some background information or whatever, but as far as an official statement goes on a matter, that would come from the mayor. My role as far as communications are a lot more on the social media side, so my job
Right.
in managing the communications side of things and working with Anna, to put together particularly social media or respond to social media issues like, tweeting something or Facebooking something. She'll come to me and ask me, sort of how to handle a particular situation. So I'll provide that advice in a way I am being a spokesperson to try and get the mayor to manage social media on behalf of the municipality. I think would be onerous, and I don't think you really
no,
want
you
to do
don't
that.
want to.
So that just provides some clarity
Yeah.
on the reason that I'm included in that mix. So.
thank you for that clarity. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate Councillor Durley raising this particular issue regarding newspaper columns, and I would just say that what comes to mind is a saying, too soon old, too late smart, and that what I mean by that is I have had some experience over these years of writing columns, and sometimes in situations where I'll say I've written about something, and either I recall a couple of situations where I wrote about it, it was in the paper, and council, it was going to be dealt with that meeting that week, and then council decided to do something else, and I'm like, okay, but I just wrote about it, that kind of thing. So sometimes I wait a little bit, but I do want them to be as timely as possible. So a good example of that, Mr. Chair, would be the community is obviously very interested in what is going on with the design of this multifaceted community center. Well, I could have written about it, but I chose not to specifically for that because I knew that we needed to deal with something here. So now that council, the committee's made some determinations, council's made some determinations now, you'll see either next week or the week after, I'll write about it to inform the community about what has been decided. And then occasionally I do write about regional issues as well. So I will admit that it is it has been over the years, a bit of a learning curve, and I may have gone out, especially early on, a little too early on some of those issues with the idea of informing the community. But now sometimes I hold back a little bit on some of those columns. So that would be my only comments on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question of you, Mr. Mayor, if nobody else does. Logistically, is it impossible, would it be impossible to, as you do your articles, to circulate them to council so that we know what's coming down the pipe before it hits the press?
I could do it before, I would, thank you for the question. I would be reluctant to, quite frankly, ask for your input, if that's what you're asking. Somebody, Councillor Ribiak made the reference to a camel, which is, a horse drawn by committee. So I would be reluctant to do that, but certainly I could, when the columns go out to the paper, it could be handed to, sent out to council as well. But I would not want you to, the reason I've been reluctant to do that is because then you might say, well, I want you to change it or not change it or nuance this, or, you'd say it differently. So that's why I haven't done that. So the columns at the end of the day, are with my name on them. So that's why I've been reluctant to do it.
I have some comments, but I'll defer to Councillor Papp.
I agree, except the only thing is the prerequisite that it's implied and understood, and I say this very seriously, that anything you write about has to be within the purview of our responsibilities as well. And you're right, there has been a learning curve. I don't want to input on your column because I don't need to. And I don't, it's a fact, you're not going to write something that's going to put us in a position where we're vulnerable. And that's what I think you're trying to say, that, I mean, I don't know how you nuance it, wordsmith it, it's no big deal, but the bottom line is, anything that is developed under your signature, and there's many ways. Some have radio shows, some have TV shows, some go on Jimmy Fallon, whatever the case may be. The point is, the council, you're not doing anything that's out of the ordinary. You're not putting us at risk.
Right.
Or putting yourself, more importantly, putting yourself at risk of the corporation. And that's all I'll say.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion on the communication policy?
Yes.
Councillor,
I have something.
Thank you. I have three areas of concern, none as meaty as that one.
Yeah, I do
But
too.
I do have three. There is a paragraph, and I'm not going to turn to it because it's a big document. But there's a paragraph there on internal communications, I believe, and it has to do with communication by the corporation to employees. And what troubles me a little bit in that is that there's no mention at all of the role of a supervisor as a link in communication. That to me is vital in any workplace. That one of the essential roles of a supervisor is to act as a communication link. And so I don't think there was any intent in writing this policy to get around that, but I think it would be useful to have that articulated in some way. That the way employees get their information about the corporation is from their team leader or their supervisor or their link organizationally. It just seemed to me glaringly absent that.
Mr. CEO, you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The intent was to cover that on the list below. So regular departmental staff meetings, that is the director meeting with staff on a regular basis and providing that communication. Quarterly staff meetings, I speak and address staff along with the various directors. So it's inherent to the way we're organized, and to pull that out, just to simply say that supervisors communicate with staff, I don't think is the intent of the policy.
No, that's great. I had a concern because it wasn't there in that first area, but you've answered that, and if you're comfortable with it, I'm comfortable with it. So that's one. A second area that I was concerned about was the absence of any mention, except maybe by implication, but I suspect it should be drawn out more, of a requirement to include a communication plan in any major public works projects to ensure that residences and businesses affected can adapt and compensate and not be surprised. So when projects are being put together of any major sense, like the beautification of downtowns or anything that approaches that a communication plan be created at the same time and adhered to as a necessary part of the project.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, that was not included in here. We do have an interdepartmental team working on that subject, so I'd like to defer including that until that work is completed. And we could come back. If we need to amend the policy, that's fine, or create a new policy around that specific issue, that's something that we can
Good.
recommend.
Good. It's just that was an area that was missing, and it struck me as being important. I have one last area. Sorry.
Anybody else to that? No? Carry on.
And the last had to do with regard to reference to councillors' obligation. Sorry, am I?
No, carry on.
Councillors' obligation with regard to expressing agreement, which is a concept that I fully endorse and have no argument with. But we do have a mechanism from time to time to put a recorded vote on the record. The purpose of that is to indicate disagreement with the direction. Obviously, once a decision is made, that's the decision of council, and regardless of what was put in the recorded vote, it doesn't change the decision, but it does kind of enter into the question of, so how do councillors behave after having disagreed publicly, put it on the record, and then are asked afterwards, so where are you on that particular issue? So I just don't want to be in a position to have to say, well, I actually agreed with it completely, even though I voted against it. I think that there's something logical about being able to articulate why one takes the position that one did and the impact of that. So I just thought that there was something preventing that.
You want to speak to it, or Nancy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would tend to disagree with that statement because it provides, I think, an opportunity for a councillor on a dissenting vote to air the grievance in the public sphere. It was specifically written this way because that's the way that the procedural process of council is designed. My best advice is that you can call a recorded vote. That's in the procedural bylaw. It's a procedural issue. And then if you are asked subsequently about the reason why, simply say that I expressed my opinion during the debate, the council has made a decision, I stand by the decision of council. And it's more of a practice answer to those types of situations than it would be, I voted against that particular issue, I recorded my vote, and here's why I voted against it. I think it creates conflict with the intent of the support of their ownership of issues, agreed or not agreed, once they're approved by council. So my recommendation would be not to consider that as being something that you would put in the media communications policy.
Thank you. Anyway, do you want to follow up on that, Councillor?
Yeah, no, just to respond, I understand and appreciate what the CAO has said, and I'm going to think about that. I guess when this comes back to council, then I have an opportunity to express it again if I have some difficulty with it. But I understand the answer, and I think it could suffice. So I want to think about it some more.
Others to that issue? No? Okay, who else had some issue? Councillor Papp?
No, I agree with Councilor Breitenbach. It's a very, very complex gray area. And you've seen examples outside this municipality of other municipalities where that dialogue becomes very dangerous and very divisive, and in some cases slanderous. And we've seen it happen. And I think we can congratulate ourselves. As much as we disagree, we've been able to control it. And as there was an article recently that we read, what you can and cannot say. And some people capiche, some people don't. But the ultimate is you're there to protect the interests of the corporation. So you may hate it, go outside, shout it, punch the wall, but the bottom line is, and if you're that, how can I say, in disagreement with what the corporation's going, then you'll have to take your chances, because in that case you become very isolated, and I've seen that happen many times.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can just respond to that, Mr. Chair, I in no way meant that there should be anything personal in a
But it does.
disagreement. But at a principal level, there may be a reason why someone says,
Yep.
no, I want a recorded vote, and I want it recorded
Right,
that I didn't
exactly.
support it.
And that's
And at
their
some
right.
point in the future, you're going to be asked, why?
Right.
And you can, that's the decision of council, and that's certainly to be supported as the direction to go, because that was the decision. But if you want to know why I disagreed with it, then, here are some, whatever the facts are. It sounds to me like one's prohibited from having that rational, objective discussion. And, I mean, never mind what comes afterwards in a political campaign when you're running for the seat, because that's even more critical, I suppose, or more pointed at that time. So it's again something I need to get my head around a little bit, and it makes perfect sense, and I fully accept that it is our role to support the decisions. We have active discussions about many things. They're matter of public record. People can watch them happen. At the end, we make a decision and we support it. Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Mr. Mayor, you had your hand up first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I read the, great discussion. I read the policy very, very closely. And the only thing that hasn't been mentioned is just a small word. So under 7.1, it says, in order to ensure the town of Pelham's social media presence is effectively monitored and maintained, it is recommended that the marketing and communications officer serve as a centralized source for the oversight, Shouldn't the policy say, like, yes or no, or whatever it is, or why is it recommended?
Mr. Chairman, as a council policy, I don't have a particular issue with saying that it would be the marketing communications officer. However, that it addresses a member of the staff directly in a council policy, so ultimately it would be my discretion whether or not that staff person would carry on that function, and I may step in, I may reassign, I may delegate, so it just provides some clarity on my end.
Okay.
That's the reason that it wasn't sort of a hard and fast, but the preference is that the marketing person do that because that's their job. So I'm,
Okay,
council's
maybe
discretion.
maybe there's too many words here. Maybe it should say simply that, in order that town of Pelham social media presence is effectively monitored and maintained, staff will serve as whatever it is. Anyways, it just struck, as I was reading it, just an odd word. So I'll leave it with the CAO to see whether there should be an amendment or not.
Staff would be a good solution as opposed to designating or defining a specific position.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Anything else? Nope. So is everyone comfortable with the motion as presented, or we've given some direction around here and there, but
Sorry,
Councilor Pat.
Mr. Chair, very quickly, just under 4.4, it says press releases, photo opportunities, media advisories are issued and arranged by the marketing communication in conjunction with the mayor's CAO and the appropriate department. And I would imply that where those are done, that we would all be privy to being part of it, right? So if that's there, I have no problem with it. Right? Thank you.
okay, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next order of business is staff initiatives. And we have a motion by Councilor Papp, seconded by Councilor Junkin, that Policy and Priorities Committee receive the issue sheet outlining staff initiatives for information. Discussion. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So staff are recommending that we're receiving this for information. What are the next steps?
You have a next step in mind?
No, I'm asking the CAO what the
You're
next
asking
steps are.
CAO. Okay.
This is for information purposes, Mr. Chairman. The staff has done the work on the initiatives that will, similar to last year, that will help meet the objectives of council. So you have an idea now of I believe it's 14 interdepartmental teams, and then there's 2 department teams for a total of 16 projects this year. They're all aligned directly with the strategic plan and will all help achieve council's goals. It's also integral to the performance management program. As you're aware, the performance of the interdepartmental teams is a part of the the annual performance planning process that we've implemented. And I might just add that I'm also incredibly impressed with the amount of work the staff did and the involvement they've had, the buy-in. I'm not aware of any other municipality that engages staff in that context, to that level. So it was a very productive process to go through, and it has the experts in the organization determining how they're going to carry out the objectives of council, which I think is the best scenario you could have.
Any other comments? If I may, colleagues, the one thought that struck me when I read through these was not only the involvement of the staff, but a role, whether council has a role in some of these initiatives as well. So I know many of us, if not all of us, heard over and over during the election, open and transparent in establishing trust. And I wonder whether there's a role for council to look at this issue and ensure that our meetings are open and transparent, that when we have our discussions, that we do our utmost to get that information out to our public, to ensure that we can never have that finger pointed at us again. I found it very uncomfortable, even though I think we tried very diligently to be open and transparent. So that was one of the issues that struck me, or initiatives that struck me, that perhaps council has a role and needs to take a look at. Go ahead.
These initiatives, Mr. Chairman, don't preclude council from doing anything. What I'm saying is that, just so you're aware, these are the focus areas that staff will be working on to advance the objectives. If council feels that there's a specific issue in the way that they're conducting the governance activities, that's completely in your purview, and that's not our place to get involved with.
Right. No, thank you for that clarity, and I understood that. I was just pointing out to my colleagues that maybe that we should take a hard look at some of these initiatives to see whether there is something that we need to bring to bear to support the work of our staff, but also to support the work of our community. So that's for another day's discussion. I put it on the table just for you to put your heads around. Maybe it'll come back to the table at an appropriate time. I don't want to belabor the meeting at this point. So I'm going to call the question that we receive the issue sheets for information. All in favor? Next order of business is the creation of an Adopt a Trail Park Program and Policy. Moved by Councillor King that the Policy and Priorities Committee receive the issue sheet regarding the Adopt a Trail Park Program, and that committee recommend to Council that Adopt a Trail / Park Program Policy be approved. Discussion.
It's good stuff.
Mr. Mayor.
Just quickly, I think it's appropriate that this be done, and glad that we're having a trail park policy, and we should, once approved, advertise, etc. And I think back to some parks. So, for example, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council do take care of the Peace Park as part of the adopting of the road of Pelham Town Square. So, and then we did have a group that was looking after Bradshaw Park. So really, two different gamuts there, one just cleaning it up, but the other being very, very actively involved. So this does provide the framework in which that activity can be harnessed. So, policy.
I'm presuming once this is enacted, then staff will take the initiative to get it out to the public and let them know what we're trying to accomplish. Call the question. All those in favor? And last but not least, the proposed volunteer policy of motion by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Junkin, that Policy and Priorities Committee receive the issue sheet regarding the volunteer policy, and that the committee recommend to Council that the volunteer policy be approved. Mr. CAO.
Just an administrative point, Mr. Chairman. I was wondering if Council would consider approving this with the key facts and the solution statement reversed. The solution statement is actually a list of the key facts, and the key facts is actually the solution statement. So if we could just switch those around, I would be very appreciative.
Just a minor adjustment. Does everybody get that?
Yes.
Any discussion?
Yeah, the question.
Second, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe it should have been under the other policy, the committee policy, but about thanking those committee volunteers. So would they fall under this policy, or would they fall under that policy? I had mentioned that, for instance, when we have those committees, they should probably be thanked and acknowledged at the close of their term, whenever that happens, at the close of the council term, or if they're an ad hoc committee that, so I don't know whether it fits here or whether it should have fit under that policy, so.
Okay. Thoughts on that?
Hey, Mr. Chair, I think it fits here fine. People who work on our advisory committees are in fact volunteers. And there's nothing in here, I think, that prohibits us acknowledging their involvement in a timely sort of way relative to their activities, and also doing it at some annual event as well.
.9
It's
speaks to that.
0.9 of the solution. Oh, of the key fact.
Yeah. But I think, reflecting on the last couple of terms, I think we missed the boat in thanking some volunteers that, you thank them as they're finishing.
Is that a function of the policy or not just being
Yeah,
diligent in
I
enforcing the policy?
don't know. I don't know.
Colleagues, help me out here.
I think having this policy may help us avoid those events going forward.
Yeah, it could. So maybe it's something to just,
Keep an eye on, monitor. Okay. Any further discussion regarding this? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. And moved by Councilor Ribbiak that this regular meeting of Policy and Priorities Committee be adjourned until the next regular committee scheduled for Monday, March 2nd, 2015, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor?
No argument here.
Carried. This meeting is adjourned.
You know, is there an opportunity for filibuster? No, nobody's going home until I've had my full thing. I've convinced you all to